trace an outline of your monster on a piece of paper, and you'll cut this out to use as a stencil for the front and back of your monster. Make sure you flip the stencil over when you go from the front piece to the back piece, just in case the monster is not perfectly symmetric. This way, when you put together those pieces of felt later, the marker can stay hidden inside. Next, after cutting those pieces out, you'll cut out the face and body details, whatever you want on the front of your monster. You could kind of plan it out first before sewing them on. And then you'll use a regular needle and thread to sew on those details on the front piece of your monster. Be careful when you're working with the teeny tiny pieces of felt because they can kind of fall apart easily. So just hold them on carefully and sew carefully around the border of each with matching thread that matches whatever those details are. When you're ready to switch to a different color of thread, you'll knot your current thread on the underside of the monster. And what I like to do is separate the two strands of thread and cut it so that you could take just one strand and sew it just barely under the surface of your felt before knotting it. That just will make your knot a little bit more secure. And then you could switch to your other color and finish up those face details. Now, once we switch over to the border of the overall monster, we're going to use embroidery floss and an embroidery needle with a bigger eye so it's easier to thread. You will use 3 strands of embroidery floss like this. And you'll start at the foot of the monster and sew around just half of it right up to the top of the head, but about 1 millimeter away from the center of the top of the head. That's where you're going to place your key ring. So you'll sew around that 1/2 of the monster and get your key ring ready. I will already have a piece of nylon cord attached to the key ring like this and knotted. So you'll see that there's a loop of nylon cord going around the plastic chain there. It's important here that where you stop your thread, it's right before that key ring and the nylon cord goes. And then you will carefully put your needle like this through the center of that loop. And then when you go across to the other side, you'll pull your needle through, go across to the other side here, and stitch right on the other side like this. And now you can continue stitching around the border of the monster. But now at this point, once you're about halfway done with the border, you could start filling the inside of the monster with scraps of yarn. Make sure you fill in the tiny details carefully, like arms or horns or ears, anything like that you have, the legs. And you could use something like a pencil or a knitting needle. Here I have a chopstick to push the yarn into those smaller areas and kind of shift it around so that it fills up the inside nicely. And as you do this, you will continue stitching around the border. Just pinch together the felt when you're stitching the border so that none of the inside filling can be seen. Now, once you get to that final stitch around the border, the monster will be closed up. It won't be as easy to shift around that filling and make it look the way you want. So really do your best to get the filling to land where you want it to land before you get to your final stitch. Once you do get to your final stitch, it'll be time to knot that embroidery floss. You could put the needle through just one piece of the felt so that the end lands between the two pieces. This is where you could place your knot so that it's not so easy to see in the end in your final product. You could take just one thread from the floss and sew it through just underneath part of the felt, just like we did earlier on the inside details, the face details. Then you could have a more secure knot. You could take those 3 strands of embroidery floss and knot them together just 2 at a time so that we get a nice secure knot. And then it will be time to cut that floss so that you can't see the remaining scraps. Cut it closely, and then you could tuck in whatever tiny pieces are still remaining. And now we are done with the monster. Hopefully you enjoyed making it. I can't wait to see what you make. Thanks for watching.